7:06 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to get right to the Newsmaker Hotline and welcome on in Fox TV host, award-winning radio host as well, best-selling author Mark Levin. It is great to have you back on the program. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's a great honor. You know, a lot of my family lives in Nashville.
I know that.
2 kids and grandkids.
How often do you make it to Music City?
Not that often. They usually come to non-Music City.
Got it.
In Florida and Virginia.
Well, listen, if you ever
come now and then, maybe once a year or so.
If you ever stop by Nashville, be sure and come see us here on Super Talk 99.7. We're all big fans. Now, let's talk about your book, though, On Power. This book is about power and what it means to everyday Americans, how power ultimately factors into our quality of life, among many other things. Talk about that, and then we'll talk about, I find this very interesting, talk about then the difference between positive and negative power.
Well, I can tell you read the book. Thank you. The book, what I try to stress here is that I feel like we've been thinking about this wrong. Liberty and tyranny and so forth. I've written a lot about it. But when it comes down to it, it's a battle over power. And power is a big subject, you know. Psychologists have written about power. Family advisors have written about power. That's not me. I don't write about that. But power does affect really your everyday lives, and it certainly affects governance. If you live in liberty or tyranny, and I break the book down and power down into negative and positive power and soft negative and soft positive power. I go through some of the ancient philosophers, some of the Enlightenment philosophers. I go through the founders and the framers, and I come to modern times. I think it's important for people to understand this country is the only country that's founded on pure positive power. And what I mean by that is this is a Judeo-Christian nation. That's how it was founded. It doesn't mean everybody has to be Jewish or Christian or even believe in any faith, but that's the nature of the country. That's how it was founded, and that's one of the reasons it's so special. And when you read the Declaration, it's clear, but they did more than that. God is the sovereign, and therefore on earth, when it comes to government, his people are the sovereign. This is a very unique viewpoint. And then they fuse that with the Enlightenment, which is, okay, great. How do we manifest that? How do we implement that here on earth? And they looked at the Enlightenment, and they looked at people like Locke and Montesquieu, the civil society. And the key they took out of that, they took many things, but the key was power needs to check power. Power checks power to do what? To protect the individual who is sovereign and to protect the civil society, the community of individuals who are sovereign. Now, compare that to modern day, what I call American Marxists and Islamists who don't believe in any of this. They believe in the collective, the centralization of government. They reject much of what's in the Bill of Rights, and you can hear the way they talk about it. And so they exist to accumulate power, to exercise power. And from that falls their attack on free speech, their promotion of wokeness, which is an attack on free speech and freedom of thought. They change the language. They change the meaning of words. They tell you what you can think and can't think. They're into indoctrination. They're into obedience. They're into creating followers. And they do this through manipulation. So there's a chapter on language that explains this. So positive power is the power that is used to advance the cause of the individual and the civil society. That doesn't mean there's no government. I mean, you don't want mobocracy and anarchy, but it means the power is applied in a way that nurtures what it is that the nation was founded on. Negative power is a full-scale attack on our civil society, on the American experiment, and you can see today where they embrace and they use aspects of Marxism and Islamism. So the book breaks down into that. I think people are going to be fascinated with this book. And the reason I wrote it is because I feel we don't have the tools, we don't make the case, we don't make the argument that we need to make, that people need to understand that if we just talk about liberty and so forth in a very superficial and surface level, well, they're talking about affordability and all the rest. They want to grab authority, and we want to keep our authority.
Mark Levin joining us, the great one. I like what you say here. Just the beginning of chapter 3 on positive power. Positive power is about the well-being of the people, not the rulers, and God is the sovereign. So when you talk about positive power, I thought it was really fascinating. Let me ask you this question. You watch Society as I do, and everyone does. Do you believe there are more examples of positive power in America today or negative power?
I think the trajectory is in the wrong direction. I think Europe is 10 or 20 years ahead of us, where the trajectory is very dire and dark. You can see they basically have a Marxist mentality. You know, von Mises, one of the great Austrian economists, and he's in the book. He said, we Americans, we all talk and sound like Marxists now, you know, about equality of results and why are there billionaires? And he goes on, and he says the average person even talks this way. In Europe, they really believe it. But here's the thing. Most Americans don't want to believe it. That is, most Americans reject Marxism, reject this radical Islamism and so forth. They love their country. And so the point of positive power is power can be used in positive ways and in negative ways, but power is going to be used one way or another. That's the nature of government. That's the nature of society. That's the nature of the classroom. That's the nature of sports. It's the nature of everything. But when we're talking about really being ruled or ruling, my attitude is this, and I write about it in the book. It's the power of or the power over. It's the power of the people or the power over the people. And when you listen to the Bernie Sanders and Schumers and those people, they want to control us. When you listen to others who don't have that point of view, who are trying to reduce the size of the central government, the central employee, the massive employee base, who are trying to push things back to the states and the individual, we can call that federalism, and we can talk about it. Most people's eyes are going to glaze over, but I think we need to talk about this in the sense of what it does to the individual and what it does to the community. And again, the left gets this. The Marxists get it. The Islamists get it. They want power. They will change the voting system for power. They will open the borders to change the citizenry for power. They will accumulate all this authority over the weather, quote unquote, over climate, quote unquote, and so forth and so on for power. And we sit here and debate as if we're in a think tank or something about, and I'm saying, no, we've got to fight power with power.
One of the things that
Hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense. And I'm desperately trying not to interrupt you because I know that our time is limited. When you talk about deception, distraction, fear-mongering, all of these things, the Democrats calling Donald Trump Hitler, calling his supporters Nazis, or that Donald Trump is going to rip up the Constitution, among all these other things. The Democrats, those are all examples of negative power. And it does, and you write in the book about how that negative power stifles independent thought. Talk about that.
What they do is they bastardize the language. They'll go on and they'll say, for instance, Donald Trump wants to get rid of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, when he's never said that. But they'll keep saying it. They'll go on about how he wants tax cuts for the billionaires, which is not what he's done and not what he wants. So they're involved in deception and propaganda and fear-mongering. And this has a huge negative impact on the body politic. We, the people, we're supposed to make decisions and in a representative government, let our representatives know how we think. The reason we have free speech is to communicate with each other. And you can do it in a healthy way or you can do it in a totalitarian way. And what the Democrat Party and the hard left, the Marxists and so forth, what they do is they lie. And they're demagogues. So they have to create these scenarios and they have to push them into the public square. And they use their media, which is loaded with Democrats and leftists, to do the same thing. So a lot of people aren't paying attention to you or me, or they're just, they're working and they're not really focused in. They're going to say, well, I don't want somebody destroying my Social Security and so forth. So decisions are being made based on a very corrupt use of speech. And so I talk about how that is what I call the negative speech for negative power to advance the cause. And this is borrowed from the worst types of fascist, Marxist, autocratic regimes, which is not about knowledge. Communication doesn't have for them the purpose of knowledge or science or anything like that. It has the purpose of manipulation, to create obedience, to get votes, to get power. Whereas positive power is, let's engage on the policies. Let's discuss the substance. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. Let us have a competition of ideas and so forth. That's the purpose of free speech.
Yep.
But that's not what the negative power crowd uses speech for. They use speech for manipulation and to create true believers. You see this in New York right now with this Mondami, affordability. Affordability. What he wants to do is basically take over every aspect of society. That's not affordability, and you attack that by explaining to people what they're going to lose, not what they're going to gain. You know, you have to compare something with something. And these Marxists and the left, they're very good at talking about pie in the sky. And we got to bring it back down to earth, not only with examples of history or current examples, but explain you've got to compare something with something. Like, who's going to run these government-run grocery stores? What experience do they have? How are they going to improve it? You say you want to get rid of the housing market. Who's going to be in charge of that? I want to be in charge of my own house. You want to get rid of billionaires. Why do I care if there's billionaires? Why do I care if there's 1 million billionaires? What does it have to do with me? That doesn't affect my life or my job. And then I explain that they attack capitalism. Well, we have to explain you have the power to go into a supermarket and buy damn near anything you want to buy with choices no human being has ever seen before, and you live better than kings or queens ever could. It doesn't matter if you're a blue-collar worker. It doesn't matter if you're middle class, lower middle class. You have access to things, material goods, cars, planes, air conditioning. Hit a switch, the light comes on. Turn the faucet on, hot. Turn the faucet on, cold. That 100 years ago did not even exist. Why? Because of the greatness of this country. We invented these things. We do these things. We have sewage systems. We have bathrooms in our homes. Nobody even imagined these things. And that's because of the Industrial Revolution. That's because power is with the people. Power is with an open mind, an ability to communicate, whereas everything's in Washington. Everything's controlled by bureaucrats. Everything's controlled by politicians who don't know how to do anything. So this power construct is what I'm saying needs to be discussed. And I wrote this book. Look, there's deep issues in this book, but I wrote this book so everybody can understand it, so everybody can use it, so people can give it to their kids, their grandkids. So when they go into high school and they go into college, they are armed and they are ready.
That's why they call you the Great One, Mark Levin. And this is your 11th book, and it is a fantastic book on power. Thank you so much for joining us here on Nashville's Morning News.
Dan, I want to thank you. The book is everywhere, Amazon, any retail store now, and I appreciate you guys very, very much, and God bless you.
All right, you too, and have a great week. Mark Levin, the Great One.